I can't see down here. I know. I'm all the way down here. It's really cold. I think this is like Siberia. Yeah. I know. I'm Kristen Rutherford. I'm also a core contributor for GeekMom. I'm the head writer of The Nerdist on BBC America, and I'm also the host of #Parent on the Geek and Sundry YouTube channel. And my daughter Vivian is in the back, right there, little face, and she's 3. She asked me if I was going to dance at this panel, so I don't know what's going to happen. We'll save some time in the end.
I wanted to get on the table and dance, but she wouldn't.
I don't know. You never know what's going to happen.
So I wanted to ask, obviously, you guys are all geeks, but there's moms who are geeks, and then there's kids who are just geeks, but then there's the pairing of both moms and kids that are geeks. When you had your children, was it sort of a foregone conclusion that they were going to be geeks, and did you worry that they may not like those types of things?
I'll grab it. Okay, go for it.
Yeah, no, there was no going back, because we named our daughter, her middle name is Ripley, and she's named after Ellen Ripley, and people ask us, like, oh, is that a family name? We're like, no. It's somebody's family. And I was working at Comic-Con the year I was 8 months pregnant in a booth writing the Comic-Con special for G4, and somebody texted me, one of the other writers texted me and said, I just found an awesome facehugger plushie on the floor. And him not even knowing I was going to name my daughter Ripley, I said, texted back like, I need you to get that. I need you to get that immediately. He's like, okay, crazy pregnant lady. And then when she was born, he was like, oh, okay, now I understand. Because I was like, I have to have a facehugger plushie in her crib. So predetermined.
Yeah, I'm going to say the same thing. I think, I don't know, how could they not be geeky with all the stuff that's in the house? I mean, everybody look, they see Star Wars, they see Star Trek, mom's going to conventions, there's games everywhere, dad's addicted to the Xbox. It was impossible for them not to be.
You know, it's funny, I'm probably a little bit older than some of the people on the panel, so I grew up when being a geek was a bad word, and being a geek girl was like the weirdest thing ever. And so when my oldest daughter was born and I could tell she was a lot like me, I got worried that maybe she was too geeky. But as they grew, and finally when we had my twins, I had a discussion with my husband. I wanted to name them Edmund and Lucy. And I got vetoed on that. I don't know why. Zan and Jaina was not even an option. So they ended up being Kyle and Cassandra, but I did make them do the Wonder Twin powers activate when they were little and film them. So I guess kids are interested in what you're interested in, but I think as moms, and still female geeks aren't completely accepted, although out here is great. It must be like 40% women out there. So I think it's sort of a special challenge to be female and geek, and then being a mom who's geek, which is sort of outside, a little bit even more outside, at least to the general public.
Well, I was a geek just all by my lonesome for most of my life. In just the fact that I read books that are fantasy and science fiction, and that was about it, you know, and besides my dad, you know, would show me Star Wars, but there was no one, and I'm just, even today, I can't believe, like, I'd be carrying around books with dragons and magic on the cover, and not even, like, one boy, like, nobody even said, I read those books, like, ever. And whatever, you know, I had my friends, and they would just be like, oh, she's into that magic stuff. So I didn't realize there was a culture at all. I hadn't even heard the word role-playing. I didn't know anything about, you know, like I thought cartoons were just, you know, for when you're a kid. And it wasn't until I went back to college as an older adult and met people who were 10 years my junior, saying, you know, we'd have a conversation and be like, you know, there's a group of us who, like, you know, we play this thing called role-playing games. And I was like, I'm 28, like, you really want to hang? And like, you're a girl. we don't care. And so I was like, oh, okay. But in doing that, and then getting a good friend and started taking me to cons, and I was like, there's more people who like what I like. And at that time, my kids were like 6 and 4, which is such a great age. And so I'd come home and be like, there's this thing called manga, and they're really, and the kids are like, that's so cute, and we would just read it together. And so my emergence of the geek culture was at the same time as my kids finding it. So we were finding it all together, and just growing as my husband became more and more, oh my God, you guys are so geeky. So it kind of blossomed together with my children getting into that culture, and now they are total geeks in their own right, and we all have our favorites. But it was just a little different. I wasn't all in and then passing it down. It was more just discovering it as a family.
My husband and I said we'd try to be okay with however they turned out. Like, they're really mainstream. It's fine. We love them anyway. But, you know, it's very funny, like, the key moments. Like, this past January, we showed her Star Wars for the first time. And it's like, we sat her down with her best friend. Children, this is Star Wars. Took pictures. And she was asleep on the floor 20 minutes into it. But then Harry Potter, which I just love the series. I love it so much. I knew as a kid I would have loved it. I tried it a few different times. We got like a chapter in, and she's like, I don't understand what's going on. It's like, all right, putting it away. 6 months later, take it out. Let's read it again. I don't understand what's going on. Let's put it away. And then we've just started again, and now she's like whipping through the series. She's now through book 3, and we've been going. Olive, I'm sorry, I'm talking at you. But we've been going like book movie, like progressing through the whole series, and it's been so exciting to kind of discover it, something I knew I would have loved as a kid, through her eyes. It's like reading it again through the first time. So I think it's like a key of like not to put too much pressure on it and let them find it in their own time.
Just by a show of hands, who's parent in here? Anyone expecting at the moment? I thought we might have one. Okay. I think, yeah. I think one of the things that parents who have young kids, starting to grow up and just introducing to these kinds of things, is there a best way to go about it? Not necessarily that you don't want to turn them off or anything, but just introducing them to these things that we love so much: comic books, video games, gaming in general. I know each of you sort of has a specialization of which you are more into, so feel free to.
I'll go first. Can I do it first? My big thing is sort of games. That's kind of what I do with our kids. We have podcasts, we do gaming. I have a room downstairs in the basement that is games that just occasionally sort of come off the shelves that I can't get through to get to the car outside anymore. So we started with introducing our kids to games because that's what we as geeky parents really liked. And sort of tried to find things that they enjoyed and find things that they liked. And you kind of have to go with them. I mean, I played like 9,000 games of Candyland, and I hate that game. I wanted to burn it in a fire. I hated Candyland. And I thought, we have to find something that's more us or I'm going to kill myself. So it was just getting through it all. And we found games that they like things that involve things, fairies, and it's like, well, did you hear about this Hobbit thing? Did you hear about this fantasy thing? Did you hear about, and try to bring things in to match their interests that sort of match along with what I'd like to share with them. And sometimes it fails miserably and they don't like it, and other times they latch on to things, and you just kind of have to go with it a little bit and figure out the things they like, and then figure out the things that you want them to know that lead into that topic and kind of take it with them.
I think too, like what Nicole was saying earlier, is like if you just have the stuff around, like if you like leave it out and show your own interest in it, they'll find their ways into all the different things.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's age as well. I know for me, like I was saying with books, and my husband also read science fiction and fantasy, which is one of the reasons why I started dating him. And it's funny, when I talk to him, like, really, you're the first person who also read that stuff, so it's kind of luck. But anyway, we got married, and we have all those books on our shelf, but they're there. They were just waiting, and I never said the kids could or could not read them. I figured if they pick them up and it's beyond their level or they're not getting it, they're not going to read it, and they didn't. They saw these things, and then it wasn't until they were in their early teens, and which is interesting because that's when I was reading that same stuff too, and my son came up with a Xanth book with Piers Anthony, which I loved when I was in 7th grade, and I was just like, oh, that's a series. He's like, yeah, I just happened to read, and then he like zips through the whole series, or as many as I could collect. I think there's like 20 something. And now he's working his way through the library, whereas that we have, and really enjoying the things that I did at the same age, and that's so much fun. And that I didn't say you'll like this, like it's just been there. But my daughter is not interested in anything that my husband and I have read at all. She likes what her friends are reading, and luckily nowadays her friends are reading like steampunk books, and anything that has a cool heroine that's kicking ass on the cover, all the stuff that actually I didn't see when I was a teenager girl. So she's not looking at the Shannara books. You know, she's picking up, you know, not just Harry Potter, but there's so many now. It's so cool. So she's finding her own version of geek.
Well, I'm more the superhero person. So it was comics, which was pretty much the weirdest thing when, you know, in high school I walked around with a copy of X-Men 137 in my backpack and read it until it fell apart and it had no collector's value whatsoever. So I had this 10 long boxes comic collection, and it was when my older daughter started getting interested that I started pulling things out. Luckily there's a lot of animation and a lot of TV shows, but they got hooked on Justice League, the oldest did. And so I would sit there and watch it and explain it with them, and we used to take out the DC Encyclopedia, and you know, and I'd explain the different characters to them. Batman Brave and the Bold, my younger kids really got into because they really like the episode where Batman says he does not eat nachos. Batman gets split up into 3 parts, and one of them really likes nachos. It's very funny because he gets split into Grim and Gritty Batman and the Bruce Wayne Batman who likes nachos, and I think there's one other Batman that's the smart Batman, Tony Stark Batman. So you can turn it into even just watching TV, you can turn it into a learning experience, but again, you have to follow what they wanted. My older daughter really started reading manga, and it seems especially for girls that manga is the way to go, so she's pulled me into learning a lot more about manga and anime than I would have gone otherwise. So sometimes they take your interests and they sort of turn them into their own, but it's a case of once they find out what they're really excited about, like Harry Potter, it's just encouraging and letting them run with it. And especially if you were geeky as a kid, you can probably see the signs. You know, my youngest son taught himself to read when he was 4. He wanted to web surf. I had a computer, and you know, and everybody says don't let the kids on the computer; they're too young. He was teaching himself stop, go, forward, back, just to find the websites he wanted to find. And you know, I just stepped back and let him do it. Now he builds websites, and I have no idea what he's doing. HTML coding and all that stuff. I have no idea, but he knows.
I know we're going to keep some time at the end for questions, but I think something a lot of people are curious about is specific suggestions you guys might have of, you know, appropriate or just, you know, great comics, games for kids.
Oh, yes.
We've got stuff for you.
Comics can be really difficult, especially any DC Marvel stuff, especially for girls. Because as you see, even the Birds of Prey cover that I picked out, that was one of the better ones, but as far as girls and body and some of the artwork was a little bit too extreme. But these, I tried to pick Marvel and DC superheroes, and these are all lines. Birds of Prey is my absolute favorite comic series of all time, and one of the things I love about it is the female friendship, and you don't see that a lot in superhero stories. And then of course Batman, you know, everybody loves Batman. Runaways is a series for young adults, and my daughter, when she was 15, was so, you can buy them in digest form, so you can buy them at bookstores, and it's kind of a complete story if you stop with Brian K. Vaughan's and don't go on to Josh Whedon stuff. I love Josh Whedon, but my daughter has a whole rant about horrible things Josh Whedon did to her Runaways. So, but it's basically their parents are supervillains, and they run away. And that's the concept. And that was just something, like a lot of young adult fiction, that really struck them. And the Young Avengers are like the Marvel Legacy characters, so if your kids love the Avengers, these people are mostly connected to some of the heroes here at the younger level. And the Marvel Adventures line, that's just an example, but basically anything that's tagged Marvel Adventures is gold as far as superheroes and kids reading. So those are just the basics to start with. And I stuck with superheroes because that's what I know, but there's a ton of really awesome comics for kids. There's a ton of manga. Manga you have to really watch, though, because we think of comics as kid stuff or teen stuff. The Japanese culture thinks of comics as can handle any subject, any time. So if they're tagged teen stuff, it could be very violent and very gory.
Oh yeah, teen manga is like what we would consider probably R.
Yeah.
You really need to be careful, and sometimes just I know like we would read Bleach, and we really like that. But there would be some covers where the main character, who is like one of the female characters in the story, there's nothing weird going on, but she's like tied up in a very sexually suggestive fetish pose on a cover. You know, and and my husband's like, "What is this?" You know, and I'm like, "It's not in the book. I have no idea why it's on the cover, but you do want to watch that."
Well, the problem with going into comic shops, for kids especially, and there are a lot of really great, especially in New York, comic shops for kids, is like the Birds of Prey. That's pretty appropriate. But there have been some covers, I think the most famous, they were doing a Heroes for Hire cover, which was, I don't know if you guys know what hentai is. Yeah, and it was basically the women were all sort of, you know, tied up suggestively, and the tentacles were coming. And this was basically a cover that would be faced out in any comic shop. And so that's one of the difficulties I have. So we tend to get a lot of trade paperbacks and stuff that are outside the comic shops. And now, digital, you can go online and download what you want digitally, which is really awesome.
Actually, just before, I just want to quick also, just on that, also certain publishing houses, First Second Books, just check out First Second Books, and it's written as the words themselves. They have fantastic graphic novels for kids, and they're, that's, I just want to put that out there if you're looking for, and for all ages.
I think they're booth 12, 14 upstairs.
Yes.
I had to write it down this morning.
Okay, so we're talking about games for kids and getting them into games. And one of the things you run into with games, you try to get them outside of the sort of normal games and kind of get them into something different if you wanted to play more European style games and things like role-playing games and tabletop miniatures games. It's a little hard to get your kids away from what 90% of their friends have in the closet, you know, and to get them into something new. So I put up a couple things that I thought kids would really like that would get them looking in a different direction. Black Pirate, Forbidden Islands, and Ella Minis. 3 games that my kids love, and Ella Minis is actually this ridiculously simple card game, but you know, it's like the first step to Magic and Pokemon and all those other ones. It gets them into the idea of what card games can be like, and very easy for kids that don't really have a lot of reading and don't need to have a lot of complicated thought to get through. And then there's some for older kids that I think even probably a lot of adults have played, things like Carcassonne, Small World. Super Dungeon Explorer is great because it has little models, so if you ever wanted to get your kids into something where they're going to be doing miniature wargaming or appreciate sort of the artistic aspect of being able to paint and put things together and create characters, it's fantastic. And Summoner Wars, which these are all games that I play as an adult, and as soon as my kids were able to play them, I started playing them. And you just have to, when the rules are a little complex, there's nothing wrong with taking out a few pieces and just saying, we're not doing that, and making it simplified enough that they can figure things out. And then as they get a little older and they understand a little more, you just add those rules in, and like, well, now you're going to play like the grown-ups play. We're going to add those extra pieces. So you just kind of have to ease them in, and you'll help them find things that are a little bit different and outside the norm. There's also, we have some on there that I put, Zularetto, Ticket to Ride, which I think probably most people have played, but is one of my favorite games to play with kids because you can play it as the board game, you can play it on your Xbox, you can play it on your iPad, you can play it on your phone. You can kill more time with a child playing Ticket to Ride stuck in an airport than you can possibly imagine. That's why it's my favorite. It kills so much time, and it's great, and it lets you all sort of interact. You're not stuck there. You're playing a game and handing it off to each other, which is a lot of fun. And for role-playing games, there's 2 that I put up there that are my favorite way to get kids into role-playing games. Fairy's Tale is actually a free game. You can go online and search it. You can download all the rules. And it's a wonderful game. And Mouse Guard, which I don't know if Archaea has it sitting around up there. But
I saw it yesterday.
Do they have it up there? Okay. And Mouse Guard's a wonderful game. Again, these aren't actually kids' games. All you do is you just make them less complicated. You take out the rules instead of planning something that's going to take the kids an entire Saturday with Doritos and Mountain Dew to play. You plan for an hour and you have milk and maybe some crackers. You let the kids get so into the character creation part. That's the other thing. Let them go. If they want to spend 3 hours creating a character and you never play the game, that was fun for them. Next time you might actually play the game. So it's a little bit, again, just following their lead and having fun with it and letting it go, letting them focus on what they like in a given game.
So in the app world, I've been reading a lot lately, some statistics that most parents don't really go beyond the app stores themselves for content curation, which is very disheartening because, especially if you look in the education category, and that's the kind of games that I make, just because someone throws letters into a game, it doesn't make it educational for kids. There's so much out there that it's like, yeah, I used to work at Goldman. I've had clients like this, actually. I used to work at Goldman Sachs, but now I thought it'd be fun to make a kids app. So I made this kids app, and it's about this curriculum, and it's like, no, it's not. But there are some people out there that are doing it so well, so I just wanted to highlight some of those. And some of the ones that I have up here, like if you go to any other app by that developer, it's sort of like, like first, second books for graphic novels for kids. Something like Doodlecast, this is by Zinc Row Games in Canada. Their apps are just so beautifully simple because they take like a piece of what the technology can do and build an app around both that technology and kids' play patterns. So what you're seeing here is they give you sort of like idea starters, and then like as you make a drawing, so this is, the story starter was like, what gets muddy? And so this, like as my daughter makes a drawing of a pig in the mud with a farmer, she's actually recording her voice with it. It's like the piggy fell in the mud, and it's recording her voice along with the drawing. So what you have at the end is an actual video of the drawing happening with all that voiceover. It's beautiful. They also have great apps for like very first ones, like Sound Shaker is another one of their great apps. It's like your best baby's first app. Toontastic is another great creativity app where it's recording it as you're doing it. So you can get all these puppets that are like fully, like they'll flip when you like move them in different directions, and they'll move their arms, and you can scale them. So you can tell a whole story like you're doing animation and do the voices like, my monster is almost ready, I'm make the sound effects. And again, at the end, it yields a YouTube video that you can then share with your friends. And they're now looking into how to get this into schools. So again, they're like great uses of creativity. Things like the opposites and motion math zoom are ones I wanted to highlight, because motion math zoom, as you're thinking about the relative size of numbers, you can zoom in and out and see bigger and bigger animals and smaller animals relative to like decimals the size of a bug and then big numbers the size of dinosaurs. So it does like a little extra something to get kids to understand the concept. Opposites has a dictionary associated with it, and unbelievably this app got my daughter to read a dictionary just to learn more words so she could get better at the game. Numbers League, great one for like math concepts because you're building superheroes. I mean, so again, like, so games like that where they're marrying something kids that are really interested in a fun way that's also got some curriculum in there is great. And there's a lot of subscription services now too. I'm actually working for one that does ebooks, but BrainPop is a great one. So I don't know if you know BrainPop on the web, but they have movies about absolutely everything from how the human body works to like mortgages to, thankfully this year 9/11, because it's a hard topic to talk about, they cover it beautifully. But it's all these videos with Tim and Moby. Tim is his character and that's his robot, but just really great. So it's just like there's a lot of good stuff out there. But I also wanted to highlight, don't ignore what the games can do for kids too. So this is a shot of Survival Endless mode on Plants vs. Zombies. Has anyone here played Survival Endless on the iPad? How far have you guys gotten? Yeah, so we've gotten through like, I think round 20 was the highest, so you're supposed to survive 40 waves. This was something I took off the web, and if this is to be believed, there are 57 waves in, which is like, oh my God. It's really frustrating, but like I've never seen my daughter apply scientific method in a more concrete way than in hypothesizing what is going to work against these zombies, carrying out the plan. And so it's like, it's really great. So I always tell my parent friends, it's like, you know what, Plants vs. Zombies is a really good game for your kids.
So both my husband and I know you're preaching to the choir here. Both my husband and I work in media. He's the executive producer of Tackle Show, and we were both very, very hyper about what is her first movie going to be? What is the first movie we're going to show her? And we really agonized about it, and then we decided on Totoro. And now it is a lot of people do ask me, what's a good first film for kids, and especially toddlers. And I always recommend My Neighbor Totoro because, I remember, I think she was 2 when we showed it to her, maybe a little younger. And she just like as May is just, if you know the film, when May is just out in the woods and she's just discovering the backyard and there's butterflies flying around, like she was sitting laughing and just these long stretches of she was just completely entranced by it. And it's a really nice story without being, there is a little conflict at the end, but no parent gets brutally murdered, so there's a little bit of conflict, but it's not scary, it's not too scary, it's not too violent. It's just a really lovely story. And again, here at Comic-Con, I feel like everybody knows Totoro, but when we go out into the other world, people don't know what it is. Like she walks around with this big Totoro, and people are like, "What is that?" We went to, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Waldorf style of education, which is no media, no music. They have wooden dolls, and the children, it's a very imaginative way of schooling, and they project things on the dolls, and there's lots of fairy stuff. We went to like a Waldorf fair, and she saw wooden acorns, and she got really excited and was like, "Oh, Totoro, these are Totoro's acorns." And even the Waldorf people, I thought they would know, because they were like, "Oh, what's a Totoro?" And I was like, "Well, it's a Japanese." And like, I'm just gonna, never mind. So My Neighbor Totoro, I think, is an excellent first film for children. And then, of course, as they get a little older, she loves Kiki's Delivery Service. And I love Kiki's Delivery Service because she's so brave. She's 13 years old and she flies to another city to start a business. And it's really, and it's not even, it's a delivery service, so it's not even like she does this amazing, magical, incredible thing. She just starts like something that she can do this. And I think it's a really good movie for girls. And in general, I think the Miyazaki films are a great, his whole, every Miyazaki film is, I love it. And it's beautiful. And again, I do like Disney films. I was a Disney kid. I watched Disney films when I was young. But now that I'm a mom, and this is one of the things we talked about, is how your perspective of media changes when you become a mom. Suddenly I'm like taking it off and I'm like, yeah, where's the mom in that one? Even Toy Story, I'm like, where's the dad? Their dad never shows up ever. So is she a single mom? It's just kind of like, why? It's always like one parent. Even in Ponyo, which is Miyazaki's version of Little Mermaid, the dad, at least he's like, well, they're not really, you can't really figure out anything together, or what are they? But at least she's like, well, I gotta go talk to your mom, and she happens to be like some magical ocean, fairy or whatever, but as you do. So, but it's like, well, at least there's a mom and a dad in there. So I find that at least in the Japanese films, they might be a little bit, culturally to us, they might be a little weirder, but at least there's more of a unified family in it. So
if my youngest son were here, he would explain to you all the different, he's 13, all the different versions of the Miyazaki films and which one has the proper editing and the proper American voice and the proper voice acting.
That's amazing.
So, and now he's film editing out the web, but that's how into the Miyazaki films.
And they're wonderful, and they're wonderful films. So for television, we taught my daughter's second language is American Sign Language. She is hearing, she's not a deaf child, but her godmother, who's also one of the GeekMom core contributors, has a son who is deaf. And when my daughter turned 1, she said to me, she hadn't watched any television up to that point, and she said to me, you might want to start showing her signing time and start teaching her sign language because he's really smart, and she's going to start to get frustrated. And this is a way to teach her, the way she can express herself before she can actually express herself. So I had some of the videos. I had baby signing time, and we started out with baby signing time. And she knew a couple of signs. She already knew more, and she knew milk and mom. And I showed it to her, and I saw it on her face that she was like, oh, milk, milk. And within a week, she knew cracker, mom, dad, she knew grandpa, grandmom, and eat more, she knew more milk, and the signs just fell out of her. And this was at a year old. And I found that we would sit down every night. They're about 25 minutes, and the songs are not bad. I think Rachel's a really good songwriter, and she's the master of the earworm because you will continue to sing these songs endlessly in your head. But the only thing that stops you from like taking a fork and stabbing your eyes out is that you're learning sign language, so you feel like, well, it's not just, I mean, it could be worse. It could be some song that you just can't get out of your head, as opposed to this where you can practice. You know, so you're practicing signing. And I have to say, she was communicating with me in a way that other children her age were not communicating, and she was able to tell me things. You know, I'm very big on, you can't ever underestimate children. You should just talk to children the way you would talk to an adult, and don't ever underestimate them. And I would find that despite having that attitude, she knew things that I was like, how did you know that? How do you remember that? She would tell me things in sign language that happened days ago. And a friend of mine, she came in one time and she signed to me that, you know, she was like the man that he cut the grass. And I said, oh yeah, that's right. He came a few days ago and he cut our grass for us. And my friend, who has 3 children who are older, said to me, okay, let me just tell you what would have happened there. She would have been trying to tell you this, and you would have been trying to figure out from context clues what she was talking about, because you're in the kitchen, you're not even in the backyard, and she would have been frustrated because she would have been trying to explain this to you, and it would have turned into a meltdown. And so I really feel like it not only, it made her a pleasant child to be around. I didn't really deal with tantrums because of this. I mean, she gets tired and she gets, you know, weepy just like any other kid, or melts, but not because she ever felt frustrated or misunderstood. Yeah.
Just I also did sign language with my kid, but I was doing like more from the time she was 6 months old. Nothing's happening. I'm like, oh, this doesn't work at all. And then at 1 year old, I had a mint candy, and there's my baby, and I went, I'm not supposed to, trying to be all the good parent and not give her anything, but she really, I needed to be quiet, so I gave her a little lick, and didn't that little 9-month-old go? So they do know.
They know. They really do. So this is I recommend this for a lot of people, as it's a really nice, and the baby signing time is a really nice video. It's very pleasant. And also signing time, the series, you have to, volume 1, there's a few that are specifically for kids. I think it's Playtime Signs, My First Signs are really good first videos for them. It also, because they've been looking at the words and along with the signs, she started reading words earlier because she's sight reading, because she knows that, she said one day she pointed at the word moon that had no picture around it and said moon, and she signed it. She was like, moon. And I was like, oh my God, she's read that. And it was very, very early on. And her godmother, Melissa Wiley, she had said to me, you'll be so surprised, like they speak sooner and they will read faster. We haven't gotten to an actual reading book stage, but she is sight reading words on the earlier side. So I think it's a really great tool to help children express themselves.
I also found that gaming made for a good sight reader too. Like she do play, continue. Yes. It's like all those words. In addition to everything on Nick Jr., all the NPBS kids. There's a lot out there, but games make for readers.
So, costumes. So there's the daughter that I was talking about. I'm sure a lot of you guys have fairy girls or fairy boys or whoever. My boy is probably more of the fairy than my daughter.
Sparrowmen.
Yep, just little. But my daughter was not a fairy type of girl. So this is her at 4, and what's great is she thinks she's scary. So
I'm frightened.
She is maliciously roaring at me. And so costumes. So this costume was done by my mother-in-law. And it's so great when you have people who can sew and will put in the time. And but they don't always will continue past certain ages. So then my children, I encourage them. I like DIY. I like, you have an idea. Let's figure out how you can do it on your own. So these are different costumes recently that my daughter has done. So the one where she's steampunk, she made that all by herself. That is a newspaper dress and a duct tape and newspaper, and then she made that hat also. And I really encourage that type of creativity. I think it's fantastic for kids, especially when you have something like Halloween
What if it's a deadline, you know, and all their friends are doing something? And yes, you know, if you need to go out and buy that, you know, superhero costume, that's cool. But if you can, you know, get them excited about doing a project, that's 21st century learning. Project-based stuff, problem solving. Nobody knows how to do it. You have to figure it out yourself. We only have this amount of budget. Figure it out yourself. And then I'd like to pass this along to everyone. This jellyfish in the middle, it's a terrible photograph because it's hard to see how cool this came out to be. Those are just glow sticks, and they're just put on an umbrella. So when she was going down the street, she was just this hovering like white thing with the glow sticks floating behind her. And she wanted a costume that she could run around in, as in like put it down, but she wanted something cool. So and she wanted something at that time she was learning about electronic circuitry and stuff like that. And so we couldn't do a battery pack, and we're like, oh, glow sticks. So steal that, just totally steal that idea. It was so easy, and she'd knock on the door for Halloween, you know, trick or treat, and people would be like, I don't know what you are, but that's cool. You know, and also my kids have been trick or treating for a long time because they love making the costumes. This is last year when she was 15, and this is with her friend, and they were creepy because they would ring the doorbell and then just hold a pose. And then you just have that, and they wouldn't even say trick or treat. They would just be these statues. It was very cool. So now this is my son, who I said he's a little more of the fairy type. He's a very gentle, quiet boy who very happy that we homeschool. For geeky boys out there who may be of the same ilk, that is my son who likes girl manga things and would be beaten to a pulp. So very happy that he is himself. But when he is at Halloween, he brings out the cool, awesome Flame Fighter side of himself. So he created a superhero called Flame Fighter, and for 3 years he was Flame Fighter and he would make his own, like he'd just take magic marker and just be doing stuff, t-shirts and stuff. And finally my mom sewed him his own jacket so he could be cool like that. And so it's great when they create their own persona that is who they are not, or who they maybe wish they could be but don't know how. And that came out in Halloween every year for this little boy, that he's not fierce, and he doesn't like fighting, and he doesn't even like wrestling with other little boys, but on Halloween he would like kick ass, you know, all the time. And so his Bionicle costume that he made by himself, I think he's like 9. And then this next one, that's me and him now. And at the moment he's 13 and he's just shy of 6 feet tall. And we don't know if it's a compliment or an insult that people just say, you look like your mom. We both have very curly hair, and at that moment we're the exact same height, and we're both just skinny. So I don't know if it was a compliment that I look like a 12-year-old boy, or a compliment that he looked like a 35-year-old woman. We don't know. So we decided to play with it, and we went and we became cops. And first we tried to do a fro, and we were going to be like 70s cops, and I was going to bring a beat, you know, all that stuff. But our hair was actually too long to get the big fro, so we tied it back. So he's a good sport. So that was our cool Halloween. Yep. And that's me. And so I try to be an example for my children. And that is Matrix Barbie. So steal that idea as well. So yes, I would never encourage my children to make fools of themselves unless I did as well. And then this year I'd like to invite everyone to be part of the Munchkin Halloween. I have a Facebook page, and it's just a Munchkin card Halloween. There he is, as the cheese grater piece. You cannot go wrong with Munchkin. That's it. He just grabbed the cheese grater, and he's got a Halloween costume. I'm going to have a bow with pretty ribbons. So please, there are so many. If you don't feel like, you know, dressing up for Halloween, flip through your Munchkin card deck, and there will be something you could just be the badass bandana. There are so many things, and as nerds, you should stay with your type, you know, so if you're going to be an elf, then you can't have the badass bandana, because that's only humans, you know, I mean, that's yeah, common sense. So please do, and if you dress up, you know, post pictures, you know, you can email me, and I'll post them up on the Facebook page, trying to see how many people will join in, and have a very Munchkin, I think I had a very Munchkin Halloween, is like the name of the Facebook page.
Okay, well, this is a book that came about four editors of GeekMom decided, we ended up with a very long subtitle because we couldn't decide. There were four of us, and we all had very different ideas about the subtitle. So it's Project Tips and Adventures for Moms in their 21st Century Families. And it's sort of roughly divided into science, education, sewing, and costuming. But we geekified the titles, so it's Secret Identities, Elementary, My Dear Watson, Make It So, Get Kitchen Wizardry, and each of them has a few projects, but there's also sort of essays and ruminations about this aspect of being a geek. So it comes out October 30th, and here's the thing. If you come up and ask a question, you can come. There are a few free copies here. So, and I will answer any questions about the book, and these ladies have a lot of knowledge about a lot of things, so. Yes, question?
Come up, get a book. Come up.
Come up and get a book.
We also have other stuff. We have buttons and we have.
You can choose your
They're
sweater.
You're adorable.
Yes, we'll run out of books fast, but we have some Gravity Falls hats, a couple of t-shirts, there are Geek Mom buttons, and some Geek Mom patches here.
Okay, so you guys talked a lot about how you taught your parents to geeks, but what was it like coming out to your parents and saying, I'm a geek? Because I know it was awkward for me when I first said, Mom, I want to buy this costume. And she was like, so.
Well, you know, my mom still, the only thing that, you know, is real to her is like, oh, a book will be in a bookstore. Oh, you can make money with that, you know. And I'm 47, so my mom is 65, and she's just sort of recently, she always knew I was a little off base. My sister's the elegant career woman, and she's much more like my mother. So it's not probably, it was a long process, so I was always the odd one. But now, see, I can show her a book, and I wrote essays, and look, it's going to be in Barnes & Noble, and now she's happy. So it's hard, and it takes a long time.
Let's pick one from this side all the way in the back. No, right there with the black hat. Oh, me? Yes. Come on up and get some swag. Ask me a question.
Oh my God, you're adorable too.
All right, so my husband and I, we have two daughters. They're very young right now, they're 2.5 and 6 months. And between the two of us, we do pretty much everything. Gaming, Star Wars, part of the 501st, LARP, all that sort of thing.
Oh, wow.
I cosplayed all weekend, so did he actually. I just kind of stepped away for this. Okay, so we're going by the ratings for a lot of our comics and manga, you know, just doing this sort of thing when they're ready for the hat. My question is more along the lines of Harry Potter. Now, when Harry Potter was coming out, when I was a kid, I had to wait for the books. And by the time they came out, I was ready for the content because it's a really coming-of-age story. We're not sure what to do with it for our girls. Like, should we make them wait, or do we think we just kind of wait it out and see if we've got to wait and see what their maturity level is?
Yeah, well, I think
it
that
starts off at 11 and
depends.
ends at 18.
It's
That's a
huge, big jump.
difference.
Oh, and I think that that's going to depend on your, yeah, take some swag, your kids and your parenting. And I'm going to speak for the extreme end of conservative parenting. I made both my kids wait till they were 11. I did, all right? And I know they hated me because their friends all finished all the books while the movies were coming out, when I wasn't even letting them read it yet. And the thing is, it was not so much as it appropriate for me particularly, it was, you're not going to get it.
Yeah,
And so they got it, and they were able to read the books, and were there for the final film thing with all their friends, and so they came in on the tail end. But I have to say, like, it was tough for them because I had a little hard line, and it's not just Harry Potter, like, it's all across the board. I'm a conservative parent. So when it comes to what I show the kids, which say, why manga? But I mean, I proofread everything.
Yeah,
So it depends on you as a parent. You know, like it really depends on you. And if your kid is having nightmares, but they say they want to continue reading something or watching something, be a parent and stop it. Okay? So, but if your kid is enjoying it, like you're saying she loves it, yeah, like as a person who
I'll speak as the liberal parent. I kind of thought that we might stop after 2, but there she was, you know, she was into it, and she doesn't scare easily. So it's like, I thought part of it was like, you know, I also really love book 3, and she doesn't scare easily, but my niece who was visiting us last weekend is 11, And I'm like, it's not for you, honey. It's not for you. You don't want it. You know, it totally is kid specific.
It's so much the scary bits, but like just a maturity level. It starts off when they're 11, ends when they're 18, and I remember like looking back on it, like especially in book 5, it's full of 15-year-olds.
Angst.
Oh man, I'm like, you know, do I have my 12-year-old daughter reading about the trials and tribulations of a 15-year-old boy?
It's interesting because
So
I think you do hit that point though, because we were halfway through Raina Telgemeier's Smile, and I just stopped. I'm like, oh no, it's too teenagery, you know, and I just like, I'm like, let's put that one away for later. So it is, I mean, we may hit a point where there's something specific that I want to avoid, but Hunger Games is one I'm going to wait, you know, because that is like, I love it, and I know that some of the kids in her elementary school are reading it. I'm like, what? But it is, but that too is like, one is like, you're just going to understand it more when you're older, whereas like, you know, I think we might continue with Harry.
I also have young siblings. My sister's 12, and we were watching Avatar: The Last Airbender. And I'm cracking up about Zuko because he's 15, and I'm laughing because he's so 15, and my sister's like, wow, it's so funny. And I'm like, just wait a couple more years you'll get it. So I'm like, oh, so I'm kind of going through the trial period with my siblings, and then going with my own daughters. I'm like, all right, so kind of working out the kinks there, and you know, they're my brother and sister. It's my job to torture them, but I don't want to mess them up. Well, thank you.
And it also depends on the kids, because my oldest son wanted to watch Terminator when he was 10, and I was watching a cable version of it, and he loved it, had no problem with it, was awesome with it, and so I let him buy the DVD. I forgot about the sex scene.
I remember seeing that when I was a teenager.
So I said, oops, and he said, that's okay, Mom. I fast forwarded through it, but then I knew he was growing up when he said he didn't fast forward through it anymore.
Yeah, I didn't see the